And finally, we must realize that behind all of this obsessive striving for power, to which we have alluded the most gigantic and at the same time the most destructive, is that for which we can find no more appropriate name than business. While our philosophers dribble away their hours and desiccated dialectical disputations that result in nothing more significant than hair-splitting irrelevancies, money has conquered the world, and there can no longer be any doubt that the vital power whose throne has been usurped by gold, namely the soul, is now threatened by imminent destruction. I became convinced of the validity of these perceptions many years ago, and ever since that time, I have sought to communicate my feelings in brief essays as well as in comprehensive treatises. Treatises, however, not even the strictest adherence to philosophical principles, which has forced me to proclaim the unvarnished truth about these matters to my readers, will suffice to terminate the dangerous entity that menaces the living organism, for the dreadful things that our eyes can see are but the external reflections of perilous internal transformations that are ravaging the deepest substratum of the living organism. It is precisely at this substrate level that we situate the destructive operations of that more than human power whose goal is the ultimate annihilation of the soul itself. It just seems to be the human tendency, doesn't it? Well, that was a spicy and fiery passage from Ludwig Klages, a German philosopher from around, I think he was born in the 18th century, turn of the 19th, 20th. And I think this is from his essay, what is it, Problems with Psychology, or The Problems with Psychology. And it sort of illustrates a point we were discussing in our ongoing conversation about David Foster Wallace's Unibus Pluram, right? The tyranny and irony of a televisual culture who serves as a sort of mask and escape and garnish and all-around totalitarian power to our modern way of life as Americans, as Westerners, as moneyed people who care about money and nothing else, right? Because the war has to be funded, someone has to pay for the destruction, right? That those resources have to go somewhere. So, these are the kind of what people like Klages see as pathologies, is this destructive urge. And we left off in David Foster Wallace's with the individual man, Joe Briefcase. That's Joe TV and Susan Social Media, if I recall correctly. And that is to say the average American, the average to above average American, being lost in the managerial demiurge of our increasingly corporate culture over corporate ascendancy from the 60s to the 90s. And, what you can see is that Kafkaesque metamorphoses of an increasingly commercial culture over time that steadily changed America from Europe's desperate, disparate, and hungry backwater to becoming present mankind's and history's trashiest and most entitled mistake of a backwoods stepchild to ever happen. Yes, a unique configuration of personality, a powerful one, but also wild, young, out of control, up its own ass, young, and embarrassingly childlike and destructive as a whole. It's in terms of humanity and history, America is like a toddler. I use the word mistake here like American parents use the word in relation to their children. Whoops, in the face of corporate bureaucracy, the world never stood a chance to American whoops, like that incidental race for power and all those wars that came to be that shaped our nation into the corporate entity it's become over the last 50 to 100 years. Because remember what I said in the last video is everything that Americans do, think, believe, it's not that these things weren't around longer than the last 50 to 100 years. It's just how they exist, how they're bought, how they're sold, how they exist in their modern configurations, and how the American knows them from top to bottom has been a manufactured product over the course of the last 50 to 100 years between a lot of marketers, a giant all-powerful corporation state that became the most powerful entity on earth. Now it's one of three, right? But that's where we kind of left off. So that whoops was a powerful whoops. These people wanted religious freedom, and then that urge led to the atomic bomb. This is kind of the difference of the soul in the material world that Klages kind of, where he delineates what this trifecta or this trinity in human philosophy and human thought has kind of been through the ages. Now, I'm going to save some of his work for a future essay or for future videos here, but I hope you can see, you know, how he was seeing even in around the 1900s, a man like Klages could look to the future and see the catastrophes, the wars, the devastation of both economic, economic, material, and eco variety, right? The environment related to the destruction of countless species, which we can never get back, countless habitats and lands we can never get back, and that someone could see it so far in advance, and to see that perfected to a T of how do you strip the earth, how do you plant the earth, to mechanize the entire process, down to even the idea of mechanizing knowledge and the idea of ownership or ownership of knowledge. Everything is related to this this number system, this particular value system. So his man is increasingly going extinct, being domesticated, wrapped up in the banality of evil incorporated. Wallace goes on to write, in fact, by offering young, overeducated fiction writers a comprehensive view of how hypocritically the USA saw itself circa 1960, early television helped legitimize absurdism and irony as not just literary device, but sensible responses to an unrealistic world, a living reaction to the environment. Not these are my thoughts here, right? I'm just adding them in. Like, this is like an organism's natural reaction to an environment. It's not a cultural pretension frozen dead in time. It's not imitating other people for accolades or for money. It's earnestly analyzing a situation to try to understand, to adopt or perish, to endure, to create and procreate, right? Through these very systems that get in the way of the organism's natural processes. So for irony, exploiting gaps between what's said and what's meant, between how things try to appear and how they really are, is the time-honored way artists seek to illuminate and explode hypocrisy. In the television of, okay, and we can go all the way back to, ancient Greek philosophers. You can think of Diogenes in the marketplace holding a lantern in broad daylight, being a real smartass, going, I'm looking for an honest man, right? What a prick. Everyone had to have hated him, right? No, but apparently, he's kind of sought after. He lived in his barrel. People liked him. Uh, talk about a real personality, a real human being. There's a reason why out of all the voters that nobody remembers in ancient Greece, there's a reason why Diogenes is still remembered, at least I have a handful of humans out there. And the television of lone gunman westerns, paternalistic sitcoms, and jet-jawed law enforcement circa 1960 celebrated a deeply hypocritical American self-image. Miller describes nicely how, because remember, coming out of World War II, Americans were the heroes, and then as time went on, the corruption became apparent, and as certain philosophers have pointed out through the ages, by the time you can see the corruption, it's already too late. Like, that's already that's not the nails in the coffin, so to speak, but it is that death knell. It's the beginning of that march, right? Yet by the time these sitcoms were produced, the world of small business, whose virtues were the Hugh Beaumontish ones of self-possession, probity, and sound judgment, self-reliance, strength, strong, silent type, etc., has long since been superseded by what C. Wright Mills called the managerial demiurge, and the virtues that were personified by Dad were in fact passé. In other words, early U.S. television was a hypocritical apologist for value whose reality had become attenuated in a period of corporate ascendancy. Bureaucratic entrenchment, foreign adventurism, racial conflict, secret bombings, assassination, wiretaps, etc. It's not one bit accidental that postmodern fiction aimed its ironic crosshairs at the banal, the naive, the sentimental, and simplistic and conservative, as these qualities were just what 60s TV seemed to celebrate as American, right? As you wage perpetual war, as you lie through your teeth, as you sell out your people, as you rapaciously consume and enslave the world, right? You sit there and put on Full House, right? Cosby hides secrets, right? The FCC hides secrets. The CIA, as we've discussed, hides secrets, right? What is he talking about here? You know, as the U.S. is sitting here projecting images of like strong individualistic men, in reality, it's a nation of conformist sellouts and people who primarily work to support a perpetual war machine, right? So again, period of corporate ascendancy, bureaucratic entrenchment, forward adventurism, racial conflict, secret bombings, assassinations, wars, wiretaps, you know, all of it. This is why Americans had become increasingly cynical over the years. Anyway, and the rebellious irony in the best postmodern fiction wasn't only credible And the rebellious irony in the best postmodern fiction wasn't only credible as art, it seemed downright socially useful in its capacity for what counterculture critics call a critical negation that would make itself evident to everyone that the world is not as it seems. Ken Kesey's dark parody of Asylum's One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, suggested that our arbiters of sanity were maybe crazier than their patients. Pynchon reoriented our view of paranoia from deviant psychic fringe to central thread in the corporo-bureaucratic weave. DeLillo exposed image, signal, data, and technology as agents of spiritual chaos and not social order, right? This is what you guys keep getting wrong to this very day. Burroughs' icky explorations of American narcosis exploded hypocrisy. Gaddis's exposure of abstract capital as dehumanizing exploded hypocrisy. Coover's repulsive political farces exploded hypocrisy, right? You see, we're drowning in hypocrisy. People can't take it anymore. It's a post-moral world. Irony in 60s art and culture started out as the same way youthful rebellion did. It was difficult and painful and productive, right? And these are all, remember, like these are all like these were basically modern luxuries, it seems, and now they're gone. So and even protest was a modern luxury, and that's gone. Or you can do it, it just doesn't mean anything, or it's one more pointless image on a pointless array of ever more insane images, right? Competing for attention. A grim diagnosis of a long-denied disease. The assumption that behind this early postmodern irony, on the other hand, were still frankly idealistic, right? The etiology and diagnosis pointed towards cure, right? David Foster Wallace is saying these artists were naive, and to this day, the artists and protesters and philosophers, I'll add, are naive. The idea that revelation of imprisonment yielded freedom. No, honestly, revelation of imprisonment usually just yields resentment. If you tell a cripple to run, if you tell someone with a lame leg to run, oh shit, that's probably not politically correct. If you tell someone with a broken leg to run, you're the asshole, right? If you try to take away a hunchback's hump, you take away what gives him his character, right? So the idea that you're going to take something away from anyone, no, people defend what they have, even if it's illusion, and they will see you as the enemy, generally speaking. There's a reason why witches are burned. There's a reason why heretics are burned. So then how have irony, irreverence, and rebellion come to be not liberating but enfeebling in the culture of today's avant-garde tries to write about? One's clues is to be found in the fact that irony is still around, bigger than ever after 30 long years, now like forever, 60 long years, as a dominant mode of hip expression. It's not a mode that wears especially well, right? It's tiresome, it's exhausting, it's the voice of the dead at this point. As Hyde puts it, quote unquote, irony has only emergency use. Carried over time, it is the voice of the trapped who have come to enjoy their cage. This is because and think of Big Brother in 1984, everything's ironic, right? This is because irony, entertaining as it is, serves as exclusively negative function. It's critical and destructive, a ground clearing, right? Postmodernism, right? We're clearing out the delusions of modernism. We've moved past what was formerly clung to as naive, belief in human infancy has now been revealed to be nothing in the face of the corporate machine, because the human individual is nothing in the face of the corporate machine. Perpetual warfare that destroyed people by the millions and the thousands that never ends further proves the point that the individual doesn't matter, right? That's why Joseph Stalin could say something like, the death of one is a tragedy and the death of a million is hilarious, right? There's two different scales, there's two different value systems, two different phenomenon. So carried over time, it's the voice of the trapped. This is because irony, entertaining as it is, serves as exclusively negative function. But irony is singularly unuseful. Oh, right. So it's like it's destructive, right? So it's like having a hammer and thinking, I guess it's like that idea to a hammer, everything looks like a nail, or to a screw, everything is to be screwed. So in the modern screwy Americans' commercially developed and prefabricated mind, right, there are no boundaries here. It's just a never-ending slog in warfare. Because irony's singularly unusefulness when it comes to constructing anything to replace the hypocrisy it debunks, right? You drop a dropping a bomb is easy. How do you rebuild after the bomb goes off, right? This is where everyone hems and haws. This is where our philosophers have had their thumbs up their asses for 100 years. You know, history stopped. Uh, this is why Hyde seems right about persistent irony being tiresome. It is unmeaty. Even gifted ironists work best in sound bites. You can visit the ministry of love, but you don't want to live there. I find them sort of wickedly fun to listen to at parties, but I always walk away feeling like I've had several radical procedures, right? Because the ironist is trying to take something from you, but by being stuck there with you, they're revealing the truth of the human animal. The truth of the human animal is here we are, all evolved, with nowhere to go. And everyone seems unhappy with each other and the system they built. But isn't that what you wanted? Isn't that what you asked for? Oh no, you were born here. It's quite fated, you say, right? There isn't some other alternate reality that could have been. This is where we're actually at. So it gets kind of serious, right? So it's being stuck in the cage. Feel like I've had radical procedures, and it's for actually driving cross country with the gifted ironist or sitting through a 300-page novel full of nothing but trendy sardonic exhaustion. One ends up feeling not only empty but somehow oppressed, right? Because it's tiresome. It's just like, say what you mean already. Shut up or put up. Get the fuck out. You got nothing but complaints about the system and the this and the that and the those and the these. Well, what about you? What if we put you under the microscope? I bet I wouldn't be surprised if you're just one more last man. You are one more pre-designed consumer who exists to know names but doesn't create anything. You can destroy but can't create. That's the impotence of what Dr. Eric Fromm talks about in what he sees as the most a pathological force, which is the destructive force of humanity. That there is a nihilistic side of it that's obsessed with death, which isn't the same as Freud's notion of Thanatos and the death drive. It's not the same as a childlike obsession, but a deep and ancient like connection and understanding that in lacking the ability to wield power, one will resort to the most basic and apparent form of power, which is a pistol or a strong arm, right? That frustrated power, if it can't go covert, it will go overt. Usually power is going covert to avoid the costs of confrontation. You can see this in nature. Discuss this in other essays where was it Young or whatever, whoever we were talking about who talks about, you can see it in the spirals of certain ram's horns who they're meant to burn off this energy in fighting each other, right? But it stops there. They generally don't actually fight to the death. They don't need to. The fighting is enough to strengthen their heads, their horns, and to burn off that energy to then see who is strong enough to pass on, who will endure, right? It's not a being trying to exist. It's more like who is selected for, right? Especially with us humans and our reason, we take a great pride in who we associate with and whose ideas we want to hold on to, whose we want to pass on, and whose we want to say, stop right there, you are a dead end, right? So, irony is one such dead end. It's why it's tyrannical. It's the end of the line. It's, hey, you fought for civilization and humankind and mankind and politics, and you've arrived in your prison cell. Well, hey, at least we have a lot of comforts, right? But it's, again, the comforts of the dead. You know, and Cloggis gets into all that too. But I'll keep going. Think, if you will, for a moment of third world rebels and coups. Rebels are great at exposing and overthrowing corrupt, hypocritical regimes, but seem noticeably less great at the mundane, non-negative tasks of then establishing a superior governing alternative. And then you see in a lot of cases, like, no, they just wanted to terrorize. They just wanted to torment. That's also a will to power. Victorious rebels, in fact, seem best at using the tough, cynical rebel skills to avoid being rebelled against themselves. In other words, they just become better tyrants, right? In the world of 1984, by having your cake and eating it too, by removing the negative, right? Because remember, a word carries its meaning, thus its negation, its beginning and end. So a word like good also implies bad. A word like good also implies evil, but we got to get rid of all these excess words. So now there's just good, double, but good isn't, good is good, but it's not double good, but it could be double plus good, right? So do you see how we begin to tamper with reality to change people's perception of it? So in the world of 1984, the very usage of the rhetoric and the language and the doublespeak was to become that entrenching tool, the fortification for which Big Brother could have no fault because he just always lied. He always said the opposite of what he meant, and you had to take it because there were no other options, right? Tyranny. And make no mistake, irony tyrannizes us. The reason why our pervasive cultural irony is at once so powerful and so unsatisfying is that an ironist is impossible to pin down. All irony is a variation, right? It's hiding. All irony is a variation on a sort of existential poker face. All U.S. irony is based on an implicit, I don't really mean what I say. So what does irony as a cultural norm mean to say? That it's impossible to mean what you say? That maybe it's too bad, but that it's impossible, but wake up and smell the coffee already? Most likely, I think today's irony ends up saying, how very banal to ask what I mean, right? And then that appropriate, how very evil, right? Because if we've learned something about evil through the ages, it's banal, it's boring. It's the work of people who must do what they must do. Anyone with the heretical gall to ask an ironist what he actually stands for ends up looking like a hysteric or a prig, a prude. And herein lies the oppressiveness of institutionalized irony. The too successful rebel. The ability to interdict the question without attending its contents is tyranny. It's the new junta, using the very tool that exposed its enemy to insulate itself. Right. So Big Brother uses it against you. Everything you say can and will be used against you, and everything we say this is the nihilism of it. It doesn't matter what we say, to the point that we can lie to your face and do it with a civilized smile, and whoever's taking it just has to take it. So this is why our educated teleholics friends' use of wary cynicism to try to seem superior, because remember, this whole thing is a critique of contemporary U.S. television culture, which carried into our internet culture, which is our politics as well. So superior to TV culture is so pathetic. So the perpetual use of irony, formerly in TV and by artists, and now by social media pundits who use irony to criticize our ironic and cringe culture, he's calling it all pathetic, right? He's saying this is pathetic, this is bad, right? This is why the fiction writing citizen of our televisual culture is in such deep dog shit. What do you do when postmodern rebellion becomes a pop cultural institution, right? What do you do when the man learns how to play rock and roll? What do you do when the man becomes cool? What do you do when the man is the image that you guys bought and sold over and over again in the most blandly manufactured corporate mass-produced structure, right? The same image over and over again, and then the same ironic criticism of that same image over and over again. Rebellion becomes a pop cultural institution. For this, of course, is the second clue as to why the avant-garde irony and rebellion have become dilute and malign. Malign is in poisonous or bad for people. And then even questionable in its benedictions, right? What good is it? They have been absorbed, emptied, and redeployed by the very televisual establishment that originally set themselves athwart. Right now, they're tools of the machine. All the machines are employed by the machine, for the machine, and man is increasingly a footnote to the machine and its methods. Not that television is culpable for true evil here, just for a moderate success. Because remember, he's just saying it gives the people what they want. Marketers and every sleazy businessman and salesman, they're just trying to give the people what they want, right? What can I say to you to get you to buy the product that I am selling? Because, hey, I got to make a living too. And how can we make this more pleasant, less desperate, less annoying and intrusive? Never mind that there's no consent in any of it. It's not evil just for an immoderate success. This is, after all, what TV does. It discerns, decocts, and represents what it thinks U.S. culture wants to see and hear about itself. Social media is the same. No one and everyone is at fault, or, from the marketing perspective, become a purple cow, become noticeable, stand out from the crowd, whether that's to enjoy the product or sell your own product, right? Everyone's looking for their gimmick. No one and everyone is at fault by the fact that television started gleaning rebellion and cynicism as the hip, upscale baby boomer imago populi, right? The image of the people, right? The boomers sold it out. But and you know, look, if it wasn't for the boomers, it would have been someone else. Gen X did it too. Everyone else, the yuppies did it, the hippies did it. Everyone does it. Everyone sells out in the end because it might take them a while to find their justification, but they go, oh, I finally got it. I'm gonna go save the world. You mean you're gonna go make some money for yourself, and if you're good, other people as well, and then they really like you. But the harvest has been dark. The forms of our best rebellious art have become mere gestures, sticks, even protest. Protest isn't art, it's the foundation of our very nation. But this story has changed. You can protest, but it's for the state generally, right? It's in favor of a state. Not only sterile, but perversely enslaving. How can even the idea of rebellion against corporate culture stay meaningful when Chrysler Inc. advertises trucks by invoking the Dodge Rebellion? Oh, God. How is one to be a bona fide iconoclast when Burger King sells onion rings with sometimes you gotta break the rules? Oh, God, it's embarrassing. It's culture. You guys are so shameless. Oh, uh, the Japanese at least commit Sudoku. You guys, I don't know. You guys you just laugh at yourselves and one another. I don't know. How can a new image fiction writer hope to make people more critical of televisual culture or social media or all this, the media corporate megastructure by parodying television as a self-serving commercial enterprise when Pepsi and Isuzu and FedEx parodies of self-serving commercials are already big business? It's almost a history lesson, right? This is the crux of it. I'm starting to see just why turn of the century America's biggest fear was of anarchists and anarchy. For if anarchy actually wins, if rulelessness becomes the rule, then protest and change become not just impossible, but incoherent. It'd be like casting ballots for Stalin. How do you vote for no more voting? You don't, but by the time you voted for it, it's too late. Congratulations, here's your new prison, right? So, here's the stumper for the 1990s and now for the 2024 modern person, the young person finding themselves in this post-A-bomb, this blown apart, atomized world, this post-man, this post-humanity, post-moral, post-protest world, right? This world of mass numbers and mass forces and a mass-produced humanity where their feelings are suppressed by force or by drugs, and their thoughts are copies of other people's thoughts and ways of life and ideas, right? Uh, so for everyone born into this, including the fictionist, who both breathes our cultural atmosphere and sees himself or herself heir to whatever was neat and valuable in our postmodern culture or our postmodern literature or our modernism or our illusion of progress, how to rebel against TV's aesthetic of rebellion, right? How to snap readers awake to the fact that our TV culture has become a cynical, narcissistic, essentially empty phenomenon when television regularly celebrates just these features in itself and its viewers, right? Even politicians joke about how bad and stupid they are, right? But that's the joke of it. It's just a cover. It's just reminding you that, hey, we're just spending time. We're just filling the airwaves. Originally, the story was different. We were waiting for God to come back and he was going to destroy this wicked world. But since that's pending or not going to happen, in the meantime, the capitalists, the Christians realize, well, hey, we can we can sell it all in the meantime. What morals, what values, what church, what congregation, what country, what state, right? What humanity. But that race to the top that created a perpetual war, right, between three superpowers, now everyone is stuck there. So these are the very questions DeLillo's poor schmuck of a popologist was asking back in '85 about America, the most photographed of barns. In this case, he's talking about a story about, the dark future of image fiction where the original meaning of so you have a world in which the modern person lives. Any meaning or connection to it's not there. It's not there unless it was pre-programmed. So this group of people are on their way to view what is advertised commercially as the most photographed barn in America, right? So do you see the meta-ness of it? Do you see the irony? What was the barn like before it was photographed, he said. What did it look like? How was it different from the other barns? How was it similar to other barns? We can't answer these questions, right? We might as well be looking, it's a barn from just yesteryear, but we might as well be looking at the ruins of an ancient civilization. That might as well be our corporate culture of the 90s to the modern Gen Z, you know? We can't answer these questions because we've led the signs, seen this. Okay, we can't actually answer these questions because we've read the signs, led the signs, seen the people snapping the pictures. We can't be outside of the aura. We're part of the aura. We're here, we're now, we're in the aura. He seemed immensely pleased by this, right? And this actually reminds me of Kurt Vonnegut Jr. He says in the book Slaughterhouse-Five that human beings are the only ones who ask why. And, you know, and the aliens basically say, what do you mean why? You know, the time is just a series of moments of existence. Here we are like bugs trapped in amber. We've always been bugs trapped in amber. And then when the alien creatures reveal to the character Billy Pilgrim that they're the ones who destroy not just the world or the earth, the aliens are the ones who destroy the entire universe by trying to invent a new rocket fuel. And it freaks Billy Pilgrim out, and he goes, why do you do that? Why can't you stop? I'm try to avert it. And all he can say is like, hey, as bugs trapped in amber, as moments of time, we push the button, we always push the button, right? So there's something to that. There's a poetic aphorism in that where you constellate a certain notion of thought and create with these kind of pinpoints of thought or conception, you kind of paint a wider constellation of thought with something like a poetic metaphor or with an aphorism, or in this case, the ongoing research of an essay. So what responses to television's commercializations of the modes of literary protest seem possible then today? One obvious option is for the fiction writer to become reactionary, fundamentalist, declare contemporary television or social media evil, move backwards, and contemporary culture evil, and turn one's back on the whole spandex mess and genuflect instead to good old pre-60s Hugh Beaumontish Leave It to Beaver, Bill Cosby virtues and literal readings of the Testaments, and be pro-life, anti-fluoride, anti-diluvian. The problem with this is that Americans who've opted for this tack seem to have one eyebrow straight across their forehead and knuckles that drag on the ground and just seem like an excellent crowd to want to transcend. Ooh, a bit of an insult. Besides, the rise of Reagan-Bush showed the hypocritical nostalgia for a kinder, gentler, more Christian pseudo-past is no less susceptible to manipulation in the interest of corporate commercialism and PR image. Most of us will still take nihilism over Neanderthalism. And in the modern day, you know, to say make America great again, it's like, well, one, what happened? What war did we fight and lose? And two, you know, we're not even concerned about morality anymore. It's like, shit, can people even afford to live here? Is just everyone, is the 85% proletariat just going to be homeless? So another option, David Foster Wallace goes on, and I'm getting towards the end of our discussion for tonight, because I want to pick up basically where we leave off here tomorrow and keep it a little bit more tightly wound for what I think will finally be the last one, because it gets to the final section of the essay, the end of the line. So another option, right, for the fiction writer, for the marketer, for the modern American who's concerned with being a sincere and authentic human being in this corporately manufactured and way world, blown apart, atomized world of the powerless and increasingly resentful individual. Another option is to adopt a somewhat more enlightened political conservatism that exempts viewer and networks alike from any complicity in the bitter stasis of televisual culture. Oh shit, I kind of did that, right? I said it's not anyone's fault, and instead blames all TV-related problems on certain correctable defects of broadcasting technology. That's where I differ. I don't actually hold that optimism. So this is where we're going to leave off, and I'll let you consider this, and then tomorrow we'll dive into it. He says, instead of blaming people, we can blame TV-related problems on technology, right? It's just a bait and switch at the end of the day, because it's people who utilize the tools, right? Enter media futurologist George Gilder, a Hudson Institute senior fellow and author of 1990's Life After Television. Ooh, this is fun. The Coming Transformation of Media and American Life. Are you guys excited for this? The single most fascinating thing about Life After Television is that it's a book with commercials, published in something called the Larger Agenda Series by a Whittle Direct Books in Federal Express's Inc. Knoxville headquarters. The book sells for only $11 hard copy, including postage, is big and thin enough to look great on executive coffee tables, and has really pretty full-page advertisements for Federal Express on every 5th page. The book also largely a work of fiction, plus a heartrending dramatization of why anti-TV conservatives, motivated by simple convictions like television is at heart a totalitarian medium, whose system is an alien and corrosive force in democratic capitalism. Oh God, I remember these quaint people in the 90s thinking, if only we ban enough books and movies, if only we protest. Like, I guess liberalism has taken the stage for protest, but conservatives have always protested here too, right? Are going to be little help with our ultra-radical TV problems attached to a conservative, so it doesn't matter, still problems attached as conservative intellectuals still are to their twin-tired remedies for all U.S. ills. So David Foster Wallace is criticizing conservative Americans because he's saying that you guys have these twin-tired remedies. What are they? The beliefs that, one, the discerning consumer instincts of the little guy would correct all imbalances if only big systems would quit stifling his freedom to choose, oh God. And that, two, tech-bred problems can be solved technologically, right? Oh no, we're trapped in tar. The more you struggle, the further you're trapped. I know, struggle further. Hey, more noise is more confusion. I know, let's invent more noise. Let's invent more mediums for more noise. That'll really confuse everybody, right? As I continue to ironically point it out. So, that's actually all I printed out. I left off on the idea that everyone keeps selling and talking about the same problem. The solution to your problem is more technology. All the problems that technology keeps creating, especially the dehumanization and depotentiation, the robbing of man of his volition and his will and his ability to not just live in the world, but even fight in the world. To allow man to be man in the capacity that he's man, and to meet his needs in a way that is natural to him and that wasn't prefabricated in the last 50 to 100 years of what has become a very shallow and vapid human history that eschews all real, sincere human feeling and values in favor of irresponsibility because, hey, won't someone else be responsible, right? That's what modern power has yielded, irresponsibility. So the idea that conservatives and liberals keep putting forth the same solution reveals that there is no solution. The irony of it all, including the doublespeak of our present politics, is to hide the fact that the junta already happened. The oligarchies are well safeguarded. The monopolies are safeguarded. No one's going anywhere. Don't worry, you're in good hands. Everything is going to plan, and this idea that, oh, if only we change the technology or give people more technology or more options. 85% of people thereabouts aren't sophisticated enough to compete in this modern world. Yeah, and even then, it used to be, even the 90s, you didn't necessarily need to be an economic whiz to just get by, let alone to have a future or a family. And it's just got increasingly more insane. But basically, Gilder has this optimistic vision of the future, and he thinks the internet's going to save us. And here in 2024, he thinks internet's going to be the revival, the new weapon, the new defense, the new just whatever it is. As U.S. culture always sells itself its own technologically driven future, he's going to say, hey, this new internet world where you can recombine data and pseudo experience and pseudo dream life and kind of have a proxy for living sold or showed to you constantly through this decay of a culture where people increasingly aren't a part of it but can only watch or take part through this particular medium, right? It just gets into how complicated that is. And Wallace points out that the whole thing about postmodern fiction was understanding the more people, the more sound, the more signal, the more chaos. The bigger the herd, the harder the herd to control, right? The more noise and data, the more hard it is to cull any meaning from it. So again, this has been an ongoing analysis and questioning and side-by-side literary comparison of primarily David Foster Wallace's Unibus Pluram, TV, internet, modern culture in the U.S., art and commercialism in the U.S. are the main kind of focuses here. I began, for those who are interested, with some lines from Ludwig Klages from, I think it was Man and Earth, or Psychology and Its Problems, which will be more topics for future episodes. And last on my way out here, again, I'm Zachariah Morkowski with Sharper Pen Image Consulting. Thanks for checking out the channel. I appreciate your time and your attention. Feel free to like, share, subscribe, share it with other people, especially if you dig the literary analysis or the kind of ideas I hope that it inspires in you. And I'll catch you next time. Thanks. Bye.